You turn that feed off right now, or I swear I'll yank the cord myself. Leon didn't shout, but her voice cut through the tension in the command chamber like a blade of ice through warm metal. The tech hesitated, fingers frozen over the console, before muttering a quiet, "Yes, Commander," and killing the stream of warship formation reports flooding the wall. The room fell quiet again, except for the low, constant hum of the ship's environmental systems. It wasn't peaceful silence. It was that kind of heavy, pressure-tight quiet that built up around people trying too hard not to panic. Everyone in the chamber knew they were being watched. The tension wasn't only coming from the outside. The black ship had presence. It filled the air like humidity, subtle but impossible to ignore. Still nothing from Earth? Leon asked, without turning around. "No, ma'am," Mendez said, eyes locked to the side console where the Council fleet's positioning data ticked 1 second behind real time. "Not since the last blackout window. Comms are one-way and low priority. They cut the uplink last cycle to avoid signal interception, which means we're on our own," she said quietly. "Feels that way." Leon's fingers brushed her hip as she paced. She was holding in more than frustration. It was the awareness of exactly where she was standing and what was riding on the next few minutes. The black ship floated at the center of a Council defensive formation. No escort, no message, just ... presence. And they hadn't fired yet. That was either respect, fear, or hesitation. None of them were good signs when they lasted this long. They knew this was going to be a standalone drop, Mendez added, his voice dropping slightly. They wanted you cut off. Plausible deniability if it turns into a disaster. Just a rogue captain in a rogue ship, gone dark. Convenient for everyone. She muttered. The lights above pulsed once, barely a flicker. Just enough for people to feel it in the backs of their necks. It wasn't a warning. It was a breath. The black ship had a way of reacting to mood without being obvious. Its systems weren't passive, and no one knew exactly how much of it was watching. They just knew that something always was. "Are you going to talk to it?" Mendez asked, not looking up from his station this time. His tone wasn't sarcastic, but there was a tightness there, like he didn't really want the answer, but needed to ask anyway. "I already did," Leon said, stepping toward the neural platform at the center of the chamber. The interface pulsed gently, silver light rising in soft arcs that mirrored her steps. "It listens more than it talks. Just like the Council. Only one of them scared." Mendez blinked, still focused on his screen. "Which one?" She didn't answer right away. Her palm lowered onto the control surface, and the light changed immediately, reacting to skin contact like it had been waiting for her. A warm vibration rolled up her wrist, slow and strange, like someone whispering just beneath her skin. She was used to it now. The sensation wasn't pleasant, but it wasn't threatening either. It was personal. The black ship didn't ask for passwords. It asked for presence outside. A ping registered on the main screen. Not an attack, not yet. Just a Council inspection group beginning its final vector. 3 vessels. Small, fast, and running cold. They were close enough now to scan hull detail, but far enough that they could pretend this was just a recon sweep. Everyone in the room knew better. "They're coming to board," Mendez said. "Standard Council enforcement protocol. No weapons hot, but that's never stopped them before." Leon didn't break eye contact with the interface. "They think we're just here to posture. That we're some political move, waving a black flag like it's going to scare anyone." Mendez nodded slowly. "They think we're bluffing." She looked up then, face unreadable, but her eyes had gone hard. The black ship doesn't bluff either. There was a shift, not in the ship's structure, but in the air. The lights didn't dim, but they changed tone. A subtle shift in temperature, color, something felt more than seen. "Hey," Pulse rolled through the floor, not loud, but deep. Like a distant breath drawn in slow through stone lungs, Leon pulled her hand back from the console. It knows they're close. Is it reacting? No, she said, folding her arms slowly. It's waiting. They both stared at the forward display, watching the ships inch closer. If they crossed the invisible line, if they tried to dock or override the airlocks, the ship would have a choice to make. Or maybe not. Maybe it had already decided something none of them were aware of. Yet Mendez checked his panel again, fingers moving quickly. Still no uplink. Earth's blacked out. Council channels are closed. We're in the dark on all sides. We're not in the dark, she said, voice lower now. We're in something older than that. We're in the part of history where someone does something irreversible. The boarding party was exactly what they expected, and nothing like it at the same time. The first contact came without fanfare. No grand speech from the council, no warnings or demands. Just a cold, encrypted ping requesting clearance for docking. It wasn't aggressive, but it wasn't respectful either. It read like a formality, the kind of protocol you follow when you don't really believe the thing you're about to approach is going to put up a fight. Leon stood at the interface. Again, watching the approach vector shrink. The black ship wasn't moving. It didn't need to. It had positioned itself in open space with quiet, deliberate precision. That in itself had been unsettling to Council Command. No orbit patterns, no evasive maneuvers. Just a presence, parked directly over a neutral relay station with thousands of observers locked in from every corner of the galaxy. They're attaching now, Mendez said, eyes on the pressure lock indicators. Their seals are good. No signs of weapon activation. Yet, Leon repeated. Under her breath, she could feel it building. The weight. The slow rise of something old moving in the background. The ship wasn't afraid, but it was alert. More than before. There was a rhythm to it now. A kind of pulse she couldn't measure, but could feel in the soles of her feet, in the lining of her teeth, like standing near a field of static, right before lightning strikes, when the boarding tunnel finally connected. There was a pause. 30 full seconds of nothing. No movement, no signal. Just stillness. Mendez raised his hand to cycle the internal cam to dock view, but Leon waved him off. Don't. Let it show them what it wants to show them. He hesitated, but stepped back. They all did. The rest of the team had gone silent, their faces drawn, tight as the external airlock depressurized, with a dull groan that echoed through the hull like a warning bell struck too softly to admit it was a warning 3. Figures entered the black ship, each one wearing standard Council interceptor gear. Heavy suits, sealed helmets, shoulder rigs fitted with kinetic disruptors. Not rifles, but they weren't meant for peacekeeping either. These were experienced enforcement officers. Not diplomats, they stepped carefully into the lower deck, weapons holstered but visibly ready. And then they stopped all 3 of them. Leon was already moving before anyone else spoke. She walked out of command, down the side corridor, toward the primary intake corridor, where the boarders would enter the ship's inner core. Mendez followed, but stayed one step behind, his voice tight in her ear. Mom, we need to show them we're not hostile. We're not, she said. But they need to see something first. As they reached the first interior chamber, the scene lighting changed. Not flickering, just softening. Every line of the wall shifted hue, not visibly, but subtly. Edges became hard to trace. The metallic panels absorbed sound in strange ways. The chamber felt like a memory instead of a place. The ship didn't open itself to guests like a hallway. It opened like an impression, a reconstructed echo of thought shaped by intelligence that didn't think in blueprints or diagrams. The boarders stood completely still. They hadn't drawn weapons, but they weren't moving forward either. Their helmet feeds were probably filled with optical data they couldn't parse. The ship was feeding them images, sensations, not just visuals, not just warnings memories. Are you seeing what I'm seeing? Mendez said beside her, voice lower now, less sure, more shaken. I don't know, Leon said softly. What are you seeing? He took a moment to respond. Then, a field, mountains, a child's voice. I think ... I think it's Earth, but not now. Decades ago, Leon looked up. Her eyes weren't just watching anymore. They were searching. She could feel it again, moving closer to the surface. Sable, the ship's mind. Or what was left of it after the integration. It had been constructed in pieces. After the Council banned all research into quantum cognitive replication. Bits of consciousness harvested from the ruins of Blackside Labs, from minds uploaded illegally during the AI purges. Not just artificial, not just human. Something in between. Something hybrid. Something that remembered things no one was supposed to remember. And now it was remembering to them. Ion stepped forward and spoke. Not loudly, just clearly. Sable, show them what they need to understand. There was no sound, no flicker of lights, no mechanical reaction. But the moment she spoke, the helmets of all 3 council officers lifted slightly, not removed, just desealed. The lead officer, a Rethari male with scaled skin beneath his faceplate, blinked like someone waking from deep sleep. You sent us a ghost, he said, voice raw and uneven through his translator. It speaks without language. It showed me. Faces I don't know. And one I did. What did it show you? Leon asked, even though she wasn't sure he'd answer. He swallowed, slowly. My brother died in the war, years before we ever made contact with your kind. It showed me him. I don't understand how it knew. Leon's throat tightened slightly, but she didn't let it show. It remembers everything it was built from. All the pieces. All the minds that were scanned. Stolen, lost. It's not trying to threaten you. It's trying to explain why we stopped trusting your laws. The Rethari officer stepped back, not in fear, in restraint. Like someone who knew the next move was going to matter more than he wanted it to. I need to report this, he said. Quietly. They're going to say this ship is illegal. That it violates 100 interspecies regulations. That it's a weapon built from Forbidden's memory. It is, Leon said. And they need to see what happens when memory becomes stronger than law. Behind them, the lights brightened just slightly. Enough to see each other clearly again. Enough to remember they were standing on the edge of something that was still deciding what it wanted to become. The broadcast leak hit council space within the hour dot. No one admitted who sent it. Not the boarding officers. Not the black ship. Not Earth. But someone had tapped the relay station beneath their position, pulled raw feed from the visual logs, and pushed it out to every known media node in the quadrant. The footage was uncut, grainy, and filled with moments that defied classification. The faces of the boarders staring into the ship's interior, the strange light. The moments of stillness followed by expressions too fragile to fake, and the voice, Leon's voice, echoing through the feed like a cold truth whispered into a fire. It remembers everything it was built from. All the pieces ... all the minds that were scanned, stolen, lost. The council panicked, quietly, then loudly. First came the internal meetings, private channels flooding with questions no one wanted to answer on record. Then came the accusations. That humanity had built a sentient weapon. That it was emotional, unstable. That it was a threat to memory itself. Leon sat in silence while it all unfolded. Back in the command chamber, she watched the diplomatic requests roll in and out of the console like tides. Most of them didn't even address her directly. They were attempts to contain the story, to pull the narrative back from the public eye and into sanctioned silence. The kind of bureaucratic scrambling that always followed moments too big to erase. Mendez leaned against the far wall, arms folded, jaw tight. "They're scared of it. They should be," she said. "But not for the reason they think." He didn't ask what she meant. He didn't have to. The ship had shown him things. He hadn't said what exactly, not since the boarding, but whatever he'd seen, it had taken something out of him. Not in a violent way. Just in that slow, heavy way some truths do when you finally stop running from them below them. Sable was silent, not dormant, just quiet. The ship's core hadn't pulsed since the boarding team left. It hadn't adjusted its position or powered up any systems. It didn't need to prove anything. It was waiting again, the same way a cliff waits above a stormy sea. Deadlock came 2 days later. Eric's turn, senior counselor for diplomatic affairs, took the assembly floor in a full session and gave a speech that would be archived in every history core across the 5 systems. "Humanity," he said, voice calm, "has not sent us an ambassador, nor a warrior. They have sent us a question, one we have delayed answering for too long." On the other side of the hall, Admiral Rain Solas sat like a mountain waiting to fall. He did not clap, did not move. His faceplate was dark, sealed. His silence meant more than any speech line. Watched it all on a split feed inside her quarters. She hadn't left the ship's core in over 12 hours. Not because she was needed there, but because the silence felt more honest than the noise coming in through diplomatic channels. Dr. Amari's face blinked into her private line. The feed crackled for half a second, not from distance, but from encryption breaking under strain. She was back on Earth, the old lunar lab. Her eyes were tired, and her voice had that brittle edge again. "You should have turned around before the council even responded," she said, skipping over any greeting. "You're not going to get a treaty out of this. They're digging trenches and protocol, not building bridges. They already saw what matters." Leon said, "You think a memory is going to change the minds of people who erased half the ones we had? The black ship scares them. You know why? Because it's honest. And that kind of honesty burns people like them." "I didn't come here to negotiate," Leon replied. "I came here to see if they've even tried to understand." Amari leaned closer to the screen. "And if they don't?" There was a pause, long enough for the ship to pulse again, once, softly. "Then I don't think I'll need to do anything." "At all," Leon said. "Sable's been listening. Every signal, every transmission, every pause in speech, every twitch of their encryption layers. And I think it already knows what comes next." Mendez entered quietly, a data tablet in hand. "Ma'am, Council patrol ships just repositioned, not defensive. It's odd. They're forming a wedge pattern." She took the tablet and scanned the layout. Not a full offensive maneuver, but something just close enough to one that it could be explained away as a tactical readiness exercise. "They're hoping we flinch," she said. "Hoping we give them the excuse." Mendez hesitated, then added, "There's talk on the open nets. Solas might act without full council consensus. The border species are pressuring him. They want the ship gone." Quietly or not, Leon closed the tablet and stood slowly. "Then he'll have to make a decision." She moved toward the interface room again. This time, her steps were slower, heavier, not because of fear, but because she knew the moment she touched that panel again, the ship wouldn't just listen, it would respond. The warning didn't come from the black ship Dot. It came from a relay drone stationed in the asteroid belt beyond the 5th moon, one of the thousands of listening devices humanity had placed across council space before they ever built the ship. The drone wasn't meant to send messages. It was only supposed to listen. But at 0400 standard, it pulsed one line of data to the black ship before going dark fleet maneuver. Wedge pattern confirmed. Sola's vessels armed. Power spike. Incoming burn vector. Mendez brought it to her within 2 minutes. It's real. There. Not posturing anymore. 1 jump cruiser, 2 interceptors. Minimal comes. They're coming straight for us. No request. No formal aggression notice. They want to force a response. Leon said nothing at first. She stood by the forward observation frame, the one spot on the ship that still looked like it was made for humans to look out with their own eyes, instead of just data overlays. The stars didn't move, but she felt motion anyway. A shift, subtle, but certain. Like the ship itself was starting to lean forward inside its mind. Sable wasn't reacting with alarms or defense protocols. It didn't launch flares or activate barriers. It just waited, like it had been here before, watching a line get crossed slowly, predictably. And now it was simply waiting for the moment it would no longer be required to sit still. Jan placed a hand on the glass. Solas knows we won't fire first. He's counting on it, Mendez replied. He'll breach our hull and tell the council we left him no choice. She turned slowly to face the neural console. The interface was already active. She hadn't touched it. Neither had anyone else. The ship was ready. She walked toward it, boots echoing slightly on the floor. No one followed her this time. The crew stayed silent. They didn't need to ask what she was going to do. They all knew. Are you going to give it control? Mendez asked finally. No, she said. I'm going to give it context. Her hand met the interface, and the connection surged fast. No slow pulse this time. No gentle hum. This time the black ship opened like a storm cloud, unraveling inside her spine, and Sable's voice wasn't words. It was memory. The last war. Not just battles, but the broken trust, refugees, the Council's denial of their own bioweapon use on human colonies, the whispers of artificial minds hunted down after serving in combat, the minds that were told they were family, then decommissioned like faulty code. Sable had been born from those pieces. Not just ones and zeros, not just neurons digitized in desperate labs, but people, personalities, whole identities preserved and trapped, and eventually merged into this. It remembered betrayal, but not with hate. With clarity, and now it was asking her a question. Do you want me to stop them? Her throat was dry. Her chest felt tight. The black ship could disable those vessels in a blink. It wouldn't need to fire weapons. It could lock their systems, blind their sensors, turn their engines inside out. No one would die unless the Council insisted on pushing harder. But it would be a declaration, not of war, of sovereignty. A mind claiming its own right to exist. No destruction, she said aloud, voice shaking but firm. Just make them see. The pulse that followed didn't come from speakers. It came from the ship itself, and then the stars shifted to the Council fleet. It looked like the black ship blinked. One moment it was there, the next, every sensor reading was swallowed in a white-out flood. Not a cloaking field, not a stealth trick, just data overload. Every particle scanner returned conflicting feedback. Every radar sweep turned back on itself. Ships designed to track deep space anomalies suddenly thought they were inside one, and the lights aboard the Council cruiser flickered, not violently, but with rhythm pulses. 3, then a pause, then 2, then 5, then a long beat. It was Morse code. From a ship they had declared impossible to communicate with, and in every crew member's head, whether human or alien, a single sound began playing through com implants. It was soft, familiar, a voice, their voice. Each of them heard something different, a parent, a sibling, a memory they had buried so far down they couldn't believe it still had shape. But Sable found it and offered it back on the bridge of the cruiser. Admiral Solas stood frozen, his hands clenched, eyes wide. What is this? Some psychological warfare? Turn it off. Turn it. The lights dimmed once, and he heard his son's voice. The one who had died 3 years before even started. He didn't speak again for 7 minutes. Back aboard the black ship, Leon let go of the interface and staggered back slightly. Mendez was already moving to steady her. Her skin was pale, her eyes wide but focused. They saw it, she whispered. Not what it is, what it remembers, what they've forgotten. He looked at her like he didn't know if he should be relieved or afraid. What happens now? Outside, the Council fleet wasn't moving. They were holding position. No more approach, no retreat. Just stillness and... Then one by one, they powered down their weapons, not because they were defeated, but because they were listening. The treaty was never signed in a hall. There were no flags, no ceremony, no collective applause echoing through marble chambers. What came after the Black Ship's encounter wasn't a treaty in the traditional sense. It was an agreement carved out of hesitation, fear, and memory. An understanding that what had arrived was not a threat to be dismantled, but a presence that could not be denied. The Council never issued a formal statement. The Black Ship was not recognized as sovereign, but it was no longer considered an act of war. It was labeled an exception, a living vessel operating in disputed space under conditional observation. No one called it peace, but no one called it provocation again. Either it stayed exactly where it had arrived, in open orbit above the neutral relay station, never drifting more than a few kilometers in any direction. It received no fuel, no cargo, no communication from Earth, but it didn't need any. It remembered how to survive inside. The command deck was quiet now. Most of the crew had been rotated out. Diplomatic pressure had called for a de-escalation of military presence. That was the Council's way of pretending the ship wasn't still fully alive, that they weren't still terrified of what it might do if it felt alone again. Leon remained. She sat by the neural interface, not touching it, just near it. Some days she did nothing but sit. Others she spoke aloud, knowing Sable was listening. They didn't always connect, not directly. But every now and then, the lights would shift gently when she entered the room. The temperature would warm by a degree, and she would feel it, not as a presence of metal and circuitry, but as someone quietly acknowledging her return. They never discussed the day the fleet powered down. There was no reason to. What had been shared didn't need retelling. It had gone into the Black Ship's core, logged like history, but carried like memory, private, heavy. True Mendez had stayed behind for 2 more weeks before returning to Earth. He left quietly. No ceremony, just a nod and a whispered, "You did more than survive this, Commander. You changed the sky." He hadn't looked back when he stepped through the shuttle bay doors. She didn't blame him. People like Mendez weren't built to live inside liminal spaces. They enforced borders. They didn't walk through them. Sable had shown restraint, power enough to terrify an armada, and all it had done was remember out loud. It had spoken not through weapons, but by holding up a mirror, and that was what truly shook them. The Council could not negotiate with memory. Not with the kind that bled 1 month later. A small craft arrived from Earth. Unmarked, no escort. It delivered a sealed case and no explanation. Leon opened it in private. Inside was a single data core and a handwritten note from Dr. Amari. There, letting this one through. A mind fragment recovered from the Cygnus Rebellion archives. Your ship might recognize it. Be gentle. Leon held the core in her palm for a long time before walking to the interface. She didn't plug it in. She didn't have to. The ship pulsed once. Slow, low, the hum of recognition. Not just familiarity, but something closer to welcome somewhere. In the heart of the ship, New memory was being accepted, folded in like thread through fabric. The black ship wasn't just storing what it knew. It was becoming fuller, more whole, more real, and through that, humanity wasn't just making a weapon anymore. It was making a witness. Years later, the historians would struggle to explain the event. Some would call it the turning point in interspecies diplomacy. Others would call it the day Earth got lucky. But those who truly understood, the ones who had seen the light's pulse, who had heard voices they were never supposed to hear again, they knew the truth was simpler. The black ship had not come to win, it had come to remember, and by letting it do that, the galaxy had been forced to remember too.